clink of champagne glasses echoed softly through the Langley estate as sun spilled over the sprawling garden. Nathan Hale stood just beyond the veranda, dressed in tailored linen, half listening to some distant cousin drone on about startup funding. He wasn't really present. His mind had drifted hours ago. That's when he saw her. Bent gently at the waist, steadying an elderly woman along the rose path, was a figure that snapped the air from his lungs. A woman in a simple beige dress, hair twisted into a low bun. Her hand, delicate but firm, supported Aunt Judith's trembling frame. Her posture was familiar, too familiar. Nathan's glass trembled as he set it down. No one else seemed to notice. But he couldn't look away. She turned slightly, just enough for the sunlight to catch her face. It was her, Isabel. The name flashed like a lightning strike in his mind, though no one said it. She looked older, sharper around the eyes, calmer. Her features had settled into something more grounded. But he knew. There were certain people you never forget, no matter how fast you run from them. He hadn't seen her since the night he walked away, 3 years ago. No goodbye, no explanation. Just a silent exit and a passport full of new beginnings. And yet, here she was. If this story resonated with you, subscribe to the channel and like, spread the word, and tell us where you're watching from. He scanned her hand. No ring. His throat tightened. Nathan? You okay? A voice asked behind him, but he didn't turn. He just nodded faintly, eyes glued to the woman who wasn't supposed to be here. She laughed softly at something Aunt Judith said, her voice drifting over the hedges like a ghost. Not a glance in his direction, not a twitch of recognition. Was it really her? He took a slow step forward, then stopped. He couldn't walk over. Not yet. Not with the questions hammering inside his head. Why was she here? How did she end up at this reunion? His family's? Was she invited? He felt exposed, as if the sun itself had turned to a spotlight. The last time he saw her, she was sobbing on the floor of their penthouse, pregnancy test clutched in one hand. He'd told himself he wasn't ready, that it wasn't the right time. He left before sunrise. She never called. He never returned. She stood up straighter now, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek as she led Judith toward the house. She passed by him without a word. No flicker of recognition, no pause. He turned slowly, watching her disappear into the hallway of the estate. His estate. Nathan blinked. The party resumed. Music played. Laughter rang out from the terrace. But something had shifted. In him. In the air. She was back. And she wasn't hiding. Not anymore. Nathan Hale had built an empire from the art of ignoring what hurt. As Isabel disappeared down the hallway of his family estate, her presence lingering like an aftertaste of something, sweet and long denied, Nathan turned back to the terrace, grabbed another drink, and pretended his pulse wasn't pounding. But the lie only lasted so long. Later, in the silence of the upstairs guest suite, his old room untouched since his departure, he sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on knees, staring at the moonlight spilling across the rug. His mind took him back to that night. 3 years ago, their penthouse in Tribeca. Late autumn, rain ticking against the glass like a nervous habit. Isabel had come home early from work, her shoes soaked, her breath uneven. Her face was flushed, almost glowing, but the tremble in her hands made him uneasy. She didn't wait for dinner. "I'm pregnant," she had said softly, holding out a test stick, then another. 2 pink lines. Confirmation. Evidence of something. Growing, not just in her, but between them. He remembered blinking, he remembered silence, he remembered fear. He also remembered the exact words that slipped from his mouth like venom. Now's not the right time. And how her face, so full of cautious hope, collapsed in slow motion. He told himself it was self-preservation. He wasn't ready. His startup had just been acquired. A new life was unfolding, one that didn't include cribs or late-night feedings. He'd worked too hard to be chained now. That's what he believed. believed, or told himself anyway. That night he slept in the guest room. By morning, he was gone. No note. No forwarding address. Just silence. For 3 years he kept it buried. The guilt came in waves, uninvited, but never fully drowned. Sometimes in hotel lobbies. Sometimes in the curve of another woman's laugh. Sometimes in sleep, when dreams forced him to imagine what the baby might have looked like. Boy or girl, would they have had her laugh? His eyes, he never found out. And now she was here. No baby, no ring, but stronger, somehow, steadier. Nathan stood and crossed to the mirror. His reflection met him with an expression he barely recognized, something between shame and dread. He had never told anyone the full truth of that night, not even himself. The part he didn't say, the part he didn't let himself say, was this. He saw something else in Isabel's eyes that night. Not just surprise or hurt. He saw knowledge, like she had known he would run, because maybe he always had. He was a man who fled, from vulnerability, from connection, from the kind of love that demanded accountability. And now, 3 years later, she wasn't the one looking haunted. He was. A knock sounded on the door, light, polite, then gone. He didn't answer it, didn't move. He just stared out the window again, down at the rose garden where they had first kissed 5 summers ago, before. Everything was complicated. Before fear wore a suit and ambition grew teeth. 3 years of silence. And now she was back. And Nathan couldn't tell if it was punishment or fate. The next morning, the estate buzzed with brunch preparations. Laughter floated through the halls. Silverware clinked and family members mingled on the sun-drenched veranda, as if old betrayals and buried truths didn't haunt the soil beneath their shoes. Nathan tried to blend in. He stood near the espresso cart, cradling a bitter cup, pretending to listen to a second cousin ramble about cryptocurrency when a name hit him like a slap. "Mrs. Marlowe, could I get your opinion on the foundation renovations?" someone asked from behind him. He didn't turn immediately. He couldn't. That name, Marlowe, his pulse surged. He pivoted slowly, heart pounding against his ribs just in time to see Isabel, the woman he once intended to marry, standing in profile, sunlight catching the soft line of her cheek. She smiled graciously at the young architect, who'd addressed her and walked with him toward the western wing, her steps even and confident. "Mrs. Marlowe," the cousin had said. Not Miss, not Ms. Mrs. Nathan's mind raced. He left her pregnant, alone. And now she had a husband, a new life. She wore no ring, but that could mean anything. He quietly slipped away from the crowd, made his way upstairs, and opened his laptop. The family's Wi-Fi kicked in immediately. A few search queries later, his confusion turned to something more complex. No record of a marriage license, no photos, no public announcement. But her name had changed, legally. Isabel Wren was now Isabel Marlowe. He leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowed. Who the hell was Marlowe? The name tugged at something faint in his memory. Distant, buried, a literary character, a former employee. It didn't click. What did register was how differently people treated her now. She wasn't a ghost from the past. She was poised, graceful, even admired. She spoke with the assurance of someone who had rebuilt herself brick by brick. And then, just as he was about to close the laptop, he caught it. A photo, low resolution, taken at a community fundraiser in Brooklyn 6 months ago. Isabel standing next to a woman in a navy pantsuit, and a boy. A small boy, no more than 2, tugging playfully at her dress hem. Nathan zoomed in. The child's face was turned away, but the hair, dark and soft, and the tilt of the head sent a cold flush through his veins. A boy, her child, his. He clicked feverishly through the fundraiser's press release. No names mentioned, no family details, just a generic caption. Local, Advocate Isabel Marlowe attends literacy event with guest speakers and families. He stared at the photo, at the boy's shadow, at Isabel's careful, protective hand on his shoulder. A knock came on the door behind him. Quick, casual. Brunch is almost over, came a cousin's voice. She's heading out for a walk if you want to talk to her. Nathan didn't answer. His breath felt tight in his chest. Isabel hadn't just survived. She'd transformed, rebuilt herself beneath a new name, inside a new identity with allies and someone, to protect. And she hadn't said a word to him. Not one. He looked back at the screen. At the boy again. Marlowe, he whispered, the name tasting foreign on his tongue. Then softer. What have you done, Isabel? The bonfire cracked and hissed as twilight settled over the estate like a silk curtain drawn across the past. Long tables were set under strands of golden fairy lights. Laughter spilled like champagne, and the scent of grilled peaches clung to the air. The Langley family, with all its mess and money, had perfected the illusion of warmth. Nathan sat at the edge of it all, a drink in hand he hadn't touched in 20 minutes. His gaze drifted past chattering cousins and glassy-eyed smiles. He wasn't listening. He was watching. The boy appeared near the woodpile, barefoot, running in the grass, chasing a paper lantern that danced with the wind. 5, maybe 6. His steps light. His laugh, too bright to ignore, and his eyes, when they caught the firelight, hazel. Not brown, not green. Hazel. Nathan's hazel. A chill coiled at the base of his spine. He stood slowly, excusing himself without words, moving toward the outer edge of the lawn where fewer people gathered. The boy had joined a small circle of children, giggling as they roasted marshmallows and shared ghost stories. Then Isabel appeared behind him. She knelt, whispered something into his ear, and the boy nodded. She brushed something off his shoulder with tender fingers. The boy leaned into her touch without looking. He trusted her implicitly, like a child who'd known nothing but her steadiness. Nathan's hands clenched into fists. The fire snapped, throwing embers into the sky like fragments of things unspoken. Could it be? 3 years ago, she'd been just weeks pregnant when he left. That child, this child would be nearly 6 now. The timeline fit, but the silence didn't. The lack of anger, the absence of accusations. If the boy was his, why hadn't she come forward? Or was it someone else's? Jealousy curled into his chest, bitter and bruising. He watched the boy whisper something to Isabel. She smiled, then gently nudged him toward the dessert table. The boy ran off, unaware that someone was watching his every move like a man trying to piece together a forgotten dream. Nathan took a step closer, and another. Then Isabel turned, their eyes locked for the first time in years. Not across a courtroom, not in a memory, but here, alive, present, real. She didn't flinch, didn't smile. She simply looked at him with unreadable calm, as if he were just another relative, another man who once promised something and then quietly disappeared. He opened his mouth, but nothing came. His tongue felt clumsy, the weight of 3 years sealing his throat. A breeze stirred her hair. The firelight caught the gold in her earrings. She turned away without a word. The boy returned to her side holding a cookie. She reached for his hand, and they walked back toward the main gathering together. 2 silhouettes bound by something unshakable. Nathan stood alone in the dark. Hazel eyes. His curse. His mark. His mirror. But was it his right to ask? Or had he given that up the night he vanished? The fire popped again, louder this time. And Nathan realized something terrifying. If the boy was his, he might be the only person in the world who didn't know it yet. That night, sleep refused to touch Nathan. He sat in the guest room's antique armchair, the room too quiet, the wind tapping at the window like an unwelcome guest. His phone rested on his thigh, unlocked, a gallery of old videos queued up. He had spent hours scrolling, scrubbing through years he'd tried to delete. Then he found it. A shaky 10-second clip. Never shared, never meant for anyone but him. The night she told him they were going to be parents. In the video, Isabel sat cross-legged on their bed, wearing a faded blue sweatshirt and a messy bun. A baby name book lay open on her lap. She was laughing softly, playfully pointing at the page. "Not Bartholomew, Nathan," she teased, voice gentle. "He'll need therapy by age 4. Nathan smiled despite himself, watching his past like a stranger intruding. Then something caught his eye. In the corner of the frame, just above her shoulder, the standing mirror in their bedroom. It reflected the room from a slightly off angle, and in that reflection, a silhouette. It wasn't Isabel, and it wasn't him. He froze the video, rewound, paused again. The figure lingered in the reflection, half in shadow, barely distinguishable. Broad shoulders, a dark shape. Watching, his breath caught. He hadn't remembered anyone else being there. Not that night. Hands trembling, he scrubbed through the clip frame by frame. The reflection didn't move, just stood there like a watcher behind glass, watching her, watching them. He sat back, skin crawling. A million rationalizations fought to surface. Maybe a coat rack, a trick of light, some visual distortion. But, no. This figure had weight. Presence. He remembered that night too clearly. They had been alone. He'd left just hours later. What if they weren't alone? He closed the video, opened another, an audio recording of baby name discussions, clipped laughter, casual chatter. In the background, a faint static hum, like interference, like an old baby monitor. Nathan stood abruptly, pacing the room. This didn't make sense. Had someone been surveilling them? If so, who and why? His mind spiraled. Maybe Isabel knew. Maybe this Marlowe name, this newfound confidence, this silence. Maybe it was all tied to something deeper than betrayal or heartbreak. Maybe she hadn't just moved on. Maybe she had survived something. He returned to the chair and opened a search window, typing in keywords: hidden camera, domestic surveillance, abuse cases. Headlines swarmed the screen. Stories of women stalked by their partners, devices planted in nursery walls, baby monitors hacked and weaponized. He felt sick. What if someone had been watching them the whole time? Not just Isabel, but him too. Down the hallway, the estate groaned quietly. Pipes creaked. The night settled deeper. In the silence, the screen dimmed and blinked off, reflecting Nathan's pale face back at him. And for the first time since returning, he wasn't just filled with guilt. He was afraid, not of Isabel, but of what might have happened after he left, of what she might know, or worse, what she might still be hiding. Dust hung in the air like suspended time, disturbed only by the creak of the attic door closing behind her. Isabel moved quietly, out of habit more than necessity. The attic of the Langley estate hadn't changed in decades. Same moth-bitten trunks, same cracked floral wallpaper curling at the edges. It smelled of cedar and old secrets. She crossed to the far wall where an old rocking horse stood beside a shelf of forgotten books. Behind them, tucked inside a hollow panel, was what she had come for. The journal, a leather-bound thing, the color of dried blood, worn smooth around the edges. Her fingers trembled as she pulled it free. She hadn't touched it in 2 years. She sat on the floor, cross-legged beneath a shaft of moonlight filtering through a dusty window pane, and opened it. Page 1. Dates, meticulously recorded. Appointments, hospital visits, counseling sessions, a silent map of pain disguised as planning. She had written everything down because she had no one to tell it to. Nathan hadn't listened, not when she bled, not when she cried through the night with phantom pains after the miscarriage. He hadn't yelled, hadn't hit her. He had dismissed her. "You're being dramatic. Don't twist my words. You should be grateful you have me at all." Each phrase was written in black ink, boxed in red. On page 13, a medical note. Patient reports chronic anxiety, sleep disruption, and disassociation symptoms, suspected trauma-related. Her handwriting next to it. He says it's just hormones, says I exaggerate. But I feel like I'm disappearing. She turned the pages faster now. Legal memos, notes from a paralegal friend, clauses Nathan had made her sign, power of attorney adjustments she never fully understood at the time. Page 42, March 19th. Found camera lens embedded in nursery smoke detector. Not sure if I'm imagining this. Can't breathe. And then, tucked at the very back, sealed, with worn tape and marked in bold letters, to be opened if I disappear. Isabel stared at it. The envelope felt heavy, as if it had absorbed the weight of every night she'd spent questioning her own reality. She didn't open it. Not yet. Downstairs, laughter echoed faintly through the floorboards. Someone clinked glasses. A toast was being made. The house was alive with celebration, but here, in this attic, time stood still. Isabel pressed her hand to her chest. Nathan was back, pretending nothing had happened, pretending time erased his silence. But this journal, this truth, was her anchor. She closed the book carefully, returning the envelope to its place. Then she stood, slow and deliberate. This time she wasn't going to disappear. She was going to be seen. And whatever Nathan had, buried, she was going to dig up. As she turned toward the door, the attic light flickered. The old bulb buzzed once, then steadied. She didn't flinch. The past could haunt her all it wanted. She was done being haunted quietly. Nathan found himself, alone near the garden wall, the last echoes of champagne laughter fading into the night. The firelight from the bonfire flickered in his peripheral vision, casting long shadows that danced like memories. That's when he felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned and saw Uncle Louis, aged, bent slightly from a life of quiet observation, but still sharp-eyed beneath his silver brow. The elder Langley rarely spoke. When he did, people listened. "Nathan," the old man rasped. "Walk with me." Without waiting for a reply, Louis shuffled toward the gravel path behind the estate. Nathan followed, tension coiling in his chest. They passed the greenhouse. The roses his grandmother once tended were still blooming in the moonlight. "She was always a strong girl, that one," Louis said softly. "Had a fire in her even when everyone else pretended she was nothing more than pretty wallpaper." Nathan knew who he meant. "Isabel." "Uncle," Nathan began, but Louis held up a hand. "She came to me once," he said. "Late, shaking like a leaf. Said she needed someone in the family who wasn't blinded by your father's charm. Or yours." Nathan froze. Louis's voice dropped. "Told me she was afraid, that something wasn't right. But the next day, your father paid me a visit. Said if I valued my place in this family, I'd forget she ever came." Nathan's throat tightened. "You're saying my father—" "I'm saying," Louis interrupted gently, "that some truths rot the soul, boy, and your father had a talent for burying things before they could grow legs." The gravel crunched beneath Nathan's shoes. "I don't know what you did or didn't do," Louis said, stopping beneath the sycamore tree that had shaded 3 generations of Langley men. "But I know guilt when I see it in someone's eyes." Nathan said nothing. "Isabel didn't vanish," Louis added. "She survived, with grace, with dignity, and whatever she's holding now, it's bigger than just you. It's about all of us." Wind stirred the branches overhead. Nathan stared at the ground as if it might offer answers, but the dirt was as silent as ever. "You think she's here to destroy you?" Louis asked, his voice suddenly hard. "Maybe she's here to free herself." Nathan looked up, startled by the clarity in his uncle's gaze. "Be careful what you dig up, Nathan," Louis said. "You might not like what's waiting for you under the roots." Then he turned and walked away, his cane tapping gently in rhythm with the ache of old regrets. Nathan stood there for a long time after, the wind whispering through the leaves. He thought of Isabel's eyes, the journal she carried like armor, the boy with hazel eyes who might carry his blood. Truth didn't just rot the soul. Sometimes it demanded payment, and Nathan knew his bill was coming due. Nathan couldn't sleep. Uncle Lewis's warning circled in his mind like smoke in a locked room, and yet none of it cleared the one storm that had begun to swallow him whole. The boy, those hazel eyes, the laugh, the timing. It couldn't be coincidence. The next morning, he sat across from the child at brunch, a casual family meal, laughter, pancakes, fresh squeezed orange juice. The boy's tiny hand reached for his glass of apple juice, left, unattended just long enough. Nathan leaned in with a smile, brushing a napkin against the boy's chin. Sticky face, he joked. The boy laughed. A moment later, the straw slipped silently into a napkin. That night, he drove into the city. A private lab, one he'd used before for background checks on employees and silent vetting of investors. No questions asked. He handed over the straw. Name on the form. For personal peace of mind. The results arrived 2 days later. Probability of paternity 0.0%. Conclusion. Not the biological father. Nathan stared at the printout. His hands didn't shake. His jaw didn't clench. He sat perfectly still, breathing through his nose as if meditating. Not his child. He told himself this should bring relief. It didn't. Instead, something twisted deep in his chest. Not grief, not even betrayal. Just a heat. Quiet, consuming, and dark. If not his, whose? Was it someone she met after he left? Or before? Had she lied to him? Had everyone? He thought of Uncle Lewis's words. You might not like what's waiting under the roots. He folded the paper in half, then again, slid it into his coat pocket. He didn't throw it away. Not yet. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the lake, Nathan stood by the garden trellis watching Isabel from a distance. She was alone, adjusting a vase of flowers someone had clumsily arranged. Her movements were calm, effortless, like the years hadn't broken her. They'd honed her into something new. He stepped forward. You knew I'd ask, he said, voice low. She didn't turn. Ask what? Nathan pulled the paper from his coat, unfolded it, and let the wind catch just enough of the edge for her to see the words. She didn't flinch. You wanted me to believe he was mine, he said. But he's not. She turned now slowly, her face unreadable. I never told you he was. But you let me think it, he snapped. You stood there and said nothing. Isabel met his gaze, her voice even. You abandoned me. You don't get to rewrite what silence meant. The air grew heavy. Nathan stepped closer, but something in her eyes stopped him. Not fear. Something colder. You don't get to control this, she said. Not anymore. And then quietly she walked away, leaving the test results fluttering in his hand like a flag of war no one wanted to raise. As she disappeared around the hedge, Nathan realized something he hadn't anticipated. This wasn't about truth. This was about control, and he had lost it. Nathan stared at the empty garden path long after Isabel disappeared from sight. The DNA results in his hand now felt heavier than lead, like they belonged to someone else's life, a stranger he couldn't recognize. He'd come for answers. Now, all he had were ghosts. That evening, while the rest of the Langley family lingered, over drinks and laughter in the dining hall, Nathan took a quiet walk along the lakeside trail. A gravel crunch behind him made him stop. I suppose you have questions, came a deep, measured voice. Nathan turned. A tall man in his early 40s approached, calm and confident. Clean cut. No arrogance, just quiet authority. His gaze held. No fear of Nathan's money or name? Nathan Hale, the man said. I'm Marcus Marlowe. The name landed like a thunderclap in Nathan's mind. Marlowe. He didn't speak. Couldn't. Marcus didn't wait for permission. She didn't want me to say anything, but you saw the test. You were going to keep digging anyway. Nathan narrowed his eyes. Is he your son? No. Marcus replied evenly. He's hers. Nathan blinked. But the test? He's adopted, Marcus said softly. She lost the baby the night you left. Silence exploded between them. She miscarried alone. In her apartment. There was blood on the bathroom tile and a phone that wouldn't connect because you'd already changed your number. Nathan's knees went weak, but he held firm. The air grew thin. She didn't want you to know, Marcus continued. Not because she hated you, because she didn't want pity from the man who left her bleeding while he boarded a jet for Dubai. Nathan's jaw clenched. And you? You swooped in to play the savior? No, Marcus said. I showed up because no one else did. Flashback. Isabel's, trembling fingers on a bathroom sink, the stain growing beneath her as she dialed and redialed. Nathan's voicemail, disconnected. Her sobs echoing off porcelain. Marcus knocking on the door, panic in his voice, a jacket in his hand, carrying her down the steps with blood on his shirt. Back in the present, Nathan stood motionless, shame flooding his limbs like frostbite. His voice cracked for the first time. Why didn't she tell me? Marcus stepped closer. Because you don't ask to be part of someone's healing after you're the reason they shattered. Nathan looked down. The wind stirred the edge of the test results in his pocket again. Useless now. Meaningless. I'm not her husband, Marcus added. I'm her lawyer, her friend, the one who helped her adopt the boy when she decided she still wanted to be a mother, even after everything. Nathan's mouth parted, but no sound came. She forgave you a long time ago, Marcus said gently. But she doesn't owe you anything, not even her story. And with that, Marcus walked away, back toward the house, back toward the life that Isabel had built from ashes Nathan had never stuck around to witness. Nathan remained behind, the lake black and silent beneath a darkening sky. He had not lost a child. He had lost the right to be called a father, and worse still, he had lost the only woman who had ever truly loved him. The next morning, Nathan sat in the old boathouse, staring at the lake, its surface still and glassy. His thoughts were anything but. Every word Marcus had said looped in his mind like static. The door creaked behind him. He didn't turn. He already knew the rhythm of those footsteps. Marcus stood silently, then placed a slim envelope on the bench beside Nathan. She wrote this 2 years ago. Said if you ever came looking, I'd know when to deliver it. Nathan's fingers hovered above the envelope. What is it? Her will. Nathan glanced up sharply. She's not dying, Marcus replied. It's not that kind of will. Nathan frowned, then opened it. Inside were a few neatly typed pages on thick paper. The first lines made his heart slow. To the man who left before I could bleed out, if you're reading this, then some part of you still wants to know what you threw away. His throat tightened. You probably want answers. Maybe apologies. Maybe closure. You won't find them here. Nathan's hands trembled as he kept reading. This is not a confession. It's a mirror. You will see yourself in these words. You will feel silence the way I did, when the walls closed in and no voice came back, and when it hurts, don't look away. Nathan's breath hitched. The words weren't angry. They were precise. Calm. A scalpel, not a hammer. I imagined. You might come back. Not for me, but for control, or curiosity, or guilt if you have any left. So here's what I want in return. Feel it. Feel what it's like to not know, to wonder, to ache quietly with no one to hear. Marcus sat down beside him as Nathan's eyes stayed fixed on the last line. Give him truth, she'd written in her instructions to Marcus, but let him feel every second of what silence feels like. Nathan folded the paper with shaking fingers. She's stronger than I remember. Marcus gave a faint smile. That's because you never stayed long enough to see her rebuild. Nathan leaned back, chest hollow. And the boy? She tells him stories. Not lies. Stories of a mother who chose him, that's all he needs. The wind pushed softly against the boathouse walls. Nathan said nothing more. He had come looking for redemption, for some simple exchange that would settle the balance. Instead, he was handed the one thing he never expected. Nothing. No screaming. No revenge. Just silence. And in that silence, he began to hear everything. Rain began as a whisper, soft and scattered against the Langley estate's stone terrace, before it became a downpour that sent staff scrambling to gather tablecloths and collapse umbrellas. The final day of the reunion was supposed to end with speeches and toasts. Instead, it ended in silence. Nathan stood by the upstairs window, fingers pressed against the cold glass, watching as family members hugged their goodbyes beneath umbrellas and ran to waiting cars. It all moved in slow motion. An ending he hadn't realized had come. Across the lawn, under a navy blue umbrella, Isabel knelt to zip the boy's raincoat. She laughed softly at something he said, just a quick, warm moment, and gently tousled his curls. Then, standing tall and calm, she closed the car door behind him and circled around to the driver's side. Nathan stepped away from the window. He couldn't leave it like this. The wet gravel stuck to his shoes as he hurried down the path. The rain soaked through his blazer in seconds, plastered his shirt to his chest. But still he moved forward, toward the one thing he hadn't been able to confront all weekend. Isabel saw him before he reached her. Her body stilled, one hand resting on the door handle. Nathan stopped a few feet away, the wind tugging his wet hair across his forehead. "Isabel," he started, voice rough and almost lost beneath the rain. She looked at him. No anger, no warmth, just presence. There was nothing else. No dialogue, no dramatic exchange. She gave a small nod, neither forgiveness nor contempt. Just acknowledgement. And in that moment it said everything. Then she got in the car, buckled in, started the engine. Nathan stood there, water running down his face, as the taillights faded into the gray curtain of rain. He didn't follow. He didn't call out. The boy in the back seat never even looked back. Behind him, the reunion tents flapped in the wind, empty, forgotten. The echoes of laughter and family chatter had disappeared. Only the rain remained, drumming on rooftops and soaking into the earth. A hand touched his shoulder. It was Uncle Louis again, umbrella in one hand, cane in the other. "You got your truth," the old man said gently. "Now let her keep her peace." Nathan didn't answer. He just watched the curve in the road where her car had disappeared. There was no redemption waiting, no dramatic apology, no second chance, and perhaps that was justice, not fire, not vengeance, but simply this. She walked away, and he stood still. The storm had passed, but the estate remained hushed. No voices drifted through the corridors, no distant sound of champagne corks or clinking cutlery, just the heavy stillness of a place that had witnessed too much and said too little. Nathan moved slowly through the house. Every step echoed louder than it should have. He wasn't sure why he was walking. Maybe it was habit. Maybe it was some futile search for grounding. His shoes, still damp from the rain, left faint marks on the polished hardwood. The walls were lined with framed photographs, portraits from generations past. Weddings, vacations, stiff family poses. Nathan had walked by these images 100 times before and never really noticed them. But today, one stopped him cold. A fresh silver frame, placed delicately on a side table beneath the grand staircase. Inside, Isabel. She stood in soft sunlight, hair gently wind-blown, holding the hand of the boy with hazel eyes. On her other side was Uncle Louis, laughing mid-blink, mid-life. Cousins, aunts, all smiling. Together, Nathan scanned every inch of the photo. He wasn't in it. Not just absent, but erased. It wasn't the past minus him. It was the present without him. The realization settled slowly like fog over cold ground. This wasn't a punishment. This wasn't some orchestrated revenge story with him as the villain finally getting what he deserved. It was something worse. She had simply moved on. without needing permission, without needing closure, without needing him. Nathan sat down across from the frame, elbows on knees, hands interlaced. He stared at the glass for a long time, and then his eyes drifted to the hallway mirror. Behind it, he looked up. The man staring back at him was unfamiliar, hair damp and graying at the temples, eyes bloodshot, not from tears, but from years of sleepless ambition. Jaw clenched not in power, but in regret. The suit fit him perfectly, but somehow, he looked out of place, like he'd been dropped into someone else's skin and told to perform. What had it all been for? The company? The deals? The silence? He thought of Isabel bleeding alone that night. He thought of her typing that letter he never received. He thought of Marcus, loyal, principled, filling a space he'd once sworn to protect. A soft creak came from the hallway. The housekeeper, one of the old ones, paused, her arms full of linens. Her eyes met his briefly, and there was something pitying in them. Not cruel, just knowing. She gave a nod, polite, and continued walking. Nathan leaned back against the wall, the ache in his chest no longer panic or jealousy. It was something deeper, something final. He pulled out his phone. The screen lit up with missed calls, emails, business alerts, all the noise of a life still spinning, still urgent. But he didn't open any of them. Instead, he clicked on the one photo he still had of Isabel. It was taken in the old apartment kitchen, her eyes half closed in laughter, holding a spoonful of cake batter toward the camera. The simplicity of it made his throat tighten. He hit delete. No drama, just deletion. He stood, one last glance at the frame, at the family that was never his to control, and then he walked to the door. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds. It warmed his shoulders as he stepped down the stairs, jacket slung over one arm. No one stopped him. No one needed to. For the first time in 3 years, Nathan Hale didn't want to rewrite the past. He just wanted to leave it behind.